आ रही है सर? और मेरी वॉइस आ रही है ना? हाँ जी, गुड आफ्टरनून सर। गौरव सर, मेरी आवाज आ रही है? Students, can you hear me? release certain amount of mechanisms and the energy transfer. The biocentric point of view, right? This as a compulsory. Chain and food web in the ecosystem and how they are very much instrumental to the ecosystem functioning, right? Then we discussed ecosystem pyramids, which was talking about the representation of these relationships existing in the natural ecosystems. And we talked about pyramid of energy, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of numbers, right? So today let us continue our discussion on ecosystems. Let us understand ecosystems in detail ahead. So see, what is productivity? It is a very important concept because when we talk about, ecosystems, we discussed that in the biological organization, in the hierarchy of biological organization, ecosystem is a functional unit. If we want to understand what is going on in the biosphere, if we want to understand the functioning of the biosphere, the living sphere, we begin with the understanding of the ecosystem, right? That what is basically happening in the ecosystem. Okay, so just a second. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, that's why ecosystem productivity, that how productive the ecosystem is very instrumental for understanding this ecosystem functioning associated with the ecosystem structure, right? So the pyramid of energy introduces a very important factor, that is the rate. The rate of energy fixation by green plants regulates the rate of production of organic material from simple inorganic substances in a given area over a given period of time. I'm sure you must have read in your lower grades while being at school. This rate of energy fixation and consequent increase in produced organic biomass is called as primary productivity, right? So I repeat, what is this primary productivity? The rate of energy fixation. What is this energy fixation? Fixation of the energy which is coming from the sun, the radiant energy, and consequent increase in the produced organic biomass in the producers. It is called as primary productivity. The primary productivity can be defined as the primary fixation of radiant energy by plants in the form of organic substances and subsequent use of fixed energy by herbivores. And then, further ahead by carnivores, and then detritivores, or we can call them as decomposers. So broadly, the total amount of energy that is fixed by plants in a unit area in a given period of time is referred to as gross primary productivity. Okay. Then the significant part of this energy is released during plant respiration. The way we respire, we release certain amount of energy, right? Similarly, when plants respire, they release certain amount of energy, and a significant part of this energy gets released during plant respiration. Why? For use in metabolic activities. Hence, net primary productivity is always smaller than it is adjusted for energy losses required to support plant respiration and defined as the rate of storage of energy or organic matter in plant tissues when loss due to respiratory utilization by plants is deducted out of the gross production rate. Okay, so this means, this is basically net primary productivity is when we talk about how much energy is actually being stored. Okay, because we need to consider how much energy is being lost during respiration by plants. Fine, so this is productivity. Then, it is very important when we are talking about ecosystems, we have understood, how ecosystem structure works, how we define ecosystems, how an ecosystem functions, how different components are interrelated. But then it is very instrumental. How does it make sense to human beings, right? How does it make sense to other life forms? Clear? So here, the concept of ecosystem services comes into being. So, primarily this concept was well studied under Millennium Ecosystem Framework or Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which was carried out in 2005. And this defines ecosystem services as? See, before we come to the definition, it is very important for us to have a generic meaning. See, the services which are being provided by the ecosystem, right? Services means, the different types of services, the goods, the products which we get from the ecosystem. Okay, that is basically ecosystem service. So as defined by a Millennium Ecosystem Assessment 2005, these are the benefits that people derive from ecosystems. So, somehow it is focusing on benefits of ecosystem to mankind, somehow. So besides provisioning services of goods like wood, food, wood, and other raw materials, plants and animals, fungi, and other microorganisms, they provide essential regulating services such as pollination of crops, prevention of soil erosion, and water purification, and a vast array of cultural services like recreation and a sense of place. So further, we will go into detail. And see, this figure comes from, again, Millennium Ecosystem Framework of Ecosystem Services Assessment 2005. So see what it says. Here you can see in the green box, in the green, highlighted portion, you can easily see that ecosystem services, they can be supporting, broadly speaking, they can be supporting services, provisioning services, they can be regulating services, or they can be cultural services, right? So the provisioning services means, it refers to some tangible benefits which we directly receive out of an ecosystem. Okay, that could be food, that could be fresh water, wood, fiber, timber, fuel, etc. And you can, you can name n number of other goods which we derive from, other services which we derive from the ecosystem. So these are provisioning, these are tangible benefits which we directly receive, right? Then we have regulating services. So, we must understand that, the rain comes, the precipitation is coming down, it plays so many other functions. Who regulates all this? Definitely an ecosystem. The natural ecosystems are regulating this, okay? So the different, sort of, I must say, climate, different sort of services which come under the head regulating services. They could be climate regulation. Okay, the climate stays regulated because of the natural, because of the functioning, proper functioning carried out by natural ecosystems. Then flood regulation, disease regulation, then water purification are some of the services, regulating services. Then we have supporting services. Okay, ecosystem also provides a certain supporting services. That could be nutrient cycling, okay, all the biogeochemical cycles which we talk about, the proper nutrient cycling is happening, then we say the carbon cycle, the oxygen cycle. At times we also, refer them as regulating and supporting services, okay. So then soil formation is another supporting service. We are not going to form the soil. It is being formed by the ecosystem as directly, right? It is being formed by the ecosystem. So this is soil formation is another supporting activity. Then primary production. Okay, pollination is again one of the important supporting service. See, we won't derive any fruit, any vegetable if this, you will call it a mere service of pollination by insects. But no, pollination is very much important as a supporting service. We will not receive any fruit, any vegetable, the whole ecosystem balance will be disrupted if the ecosystem no longer provides the service of pollination. Right, so it's very important. Then we have cultural service. Cultural service talks about aesthetic. We feel good when we look out at green spaces, then we have spiritual, somehow we have a spiritual connect with nature. So this is again a service. And educational, when we go to biodiversity parks or when we go out, say butterfly parks, the children, they get to learn a lot, students get to learn a lot, being in the greener area, being in the green space. So this is an educational service. Then recreational service, we hang out in resorts or say, we play football in the green lawn. So, in natural ecosystems, when we go out, we just sit by the side of the river, we feel good. Okay, so these are recreational services. Okay, so this is how, it is very much important. All these ecosystem services which we just discussed, they are very much important as constituents of human well-being. How they provide, security, that is personal safety, secure resource access to the resources, and security from different natural disasters, right? Then how it provides, it acts as a constituent of well-being. It provides basic material for good life, adequate livelihoods. Okay, there would be no livelihood for indigenous people if they are not living in harmony with the nature. For us, adequate livelihood is possible because we have access to all these resources. Our furniture, our plastic, or if I say, the different food products which are there in our kitchen, everything. We have an adequate, style of living just because we have different resources which are easily accessible from the ecosystem. Although we are not accessing directly, but we have indirect access to ecosystems. Then sufficient nutritious food, shelter, access to goods. All this is provided by ecosystem services. Then health. We get strength, we feel well, when we are in the lap of nature, when we are close to nature. We have access to clean air and water, and you understand that these days, access to clean air, water, and land is something, which is very difficult in urban areas, especially if you talk about cities. It is something, I must tell you, it is very difficult to have access to clean air, water, and land, right? Then good social relations, see, social cohesion exists, and the mutual respect, ability to help others. It is all possible because of the support which we get through ecosystem services. Then freedom of choice and action, see, opportunity to be able to achieve what an individual values, doing and being. So this is again, this is all the constituent of well-being, which is well supported by and when well interrelated with different sort of ecosystem services. So these arrows which are there in different colors, they basically, show that what is the potential for mediation by socio-economic factors, and the intensity of these linkages, the width of the arrows basically, explains what is the intensity of linkages between ecosystem services and human well-being. So, the arrows which have a greater width, they clearly depict the intensity, higher intensity of linkages between ecosystem services and human well-being. Right. So after all this, what we discussed, you will appreciate that yes, ecosystems, their well-being, their existence, their functioning, their structure makes much sense to us human beings because they are important constituents of our well-being and they're very much linked to our well-being, and that's why it makes more sense to us. Then these, to quickly again recapitulate, these ecosystems, they have potential to supply a range of services that are of fundamental importance to human well-being, health, livelihoods, and survival. Different ways of defining ecosystem services have been developed so far, and they can be described as a benefits. Simple words, in simple words, they can be described as the benefits that people obtain from ecosystems, or as the direct and indirect contributions of ecosystems to human well-being. Most recent publications, they define the ecosystem services as contributions of ecosystem structure and function in combination with other inputs to human well-being. See, all the services which we derive are actually, these are the services which are derived as contributions of ecosystem structure and ecosystem function. And you must always remember that ecosystem structure basically drives ecosystem functioning. For instance, if we talk about canopy structure, okay, if we talk about canopy structure as one of the one of the ecosystem structures, it is very much important for the functioning in an ecosystem. Can you tell how? Just think about it. See how it is important. The canopy size, okay, the crown area, the canopy size of the trees is very much important, for the light availability on the forest floor. If the canopy is huge, it is rounded and it is huge, then very less light would reach the forest floor. And in future, in the upcoming scenario, there would be more of shade loving species which will grow up in an ecosystem, because there is hardly any intermittent light which is available on the forest floor, that is the ground surface, right? However, if we talk about say pine trees, they have triangular canopies, or if we talk about canopies which are not very huge, in those cases, there would be, the light would be able to seep through and it would be much available to the forest floor, to the species which are trying to come up on the forest floor. And there you would be able to see more of sun-loving species. Okay, so with this you can understand, with the simple example, you can understand that how ecosystem structure is very much important for the ecosystem functioning. And slowly, which species are coming up in an ecosystem is very much instrumental for the energy transfer mechanisms, because only those or the nutrient transfer mechanisms, because only those organisms are going to be a part of the food chain or the food web at large, right? Similarly, if we talk about, the leaf size, if we talk about the leaf area, if, in case if we talk about, a patch of forest wherein species, they have, smaller leaves, they have a lesser leaf area, then what would happen? They would be able to tap lesser light, because less light interception is possible through their surface area. While if we talk about an ecosystem, and if we talk about a patch of an ecosystem wherein the species, they have greater this leaf area, then they would be able to have greater light interception, and they would carry out better photosynthesis. The photosynthetic rates would be high in that case, and that would ultimately lead to more reserves, more glucose which will be present in the leaves or in the fruits. And that would again drive the functioning one way or the other. Okay, so with this, you must understand that ecosystem structure, which seems to be something very simple, it is very important and it drives the whole functioning of an ecosystem. Okay, then ecosystem cannot provide any benefits to people without the presence of people, that is human capital, their communities, which is social capital, and their built environment, that is built capital. Thus, ecosystem services, they should be perceived as a contribution of natural capital to human well-being, which forms only by interaction with human, social, and built capital. Okay, then one of the perspectives of approaching ecosystem services classification, it can be raising awareness in society about the different benefits what humans gain from the ecosystem. This approach was also in the foundation of Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Classification System, which we just discussed, and it proposed 4 main ecosystem categories. So what it is? We just discussed it, that it could be provisioning services, that is food, materials, and energy, which are directly used by people. Then regulating services, those that cover the way ecosystems regulate other environmental media or processes. Then cultural services, those related to the cultural and spiritual needs of people. Then supporting services, ecosystem processes and functions that underpin other 3 types of services. So they support, the other 3 types of services, right? Then see, it is very much important for you to know that, there in 1997, this ecosystem services valuation was carried out by Robert Costanza, by Sir Robert Costanza and his co-authors. Okay, and when you can read more about Sir Robert Costanza by googling. You will get to know, you can read his article on ecosystem services valuation. So see, what is this? Basically valuing ecosystem services, okay? Giving, owing a monetary value to ecosystem services. Now you would say that why, monetary value has to be given to ecosystem service. Why monetary value has to be given? See, because to a layman, when you explain that, that see, you are trying to destroy this 20 acres of forested land, it doesn't make sense. Okay. You are going to lose a lot in the future. The layman would say, I would see, it is not going to affect me that much. Or even if he understands, it won't make that sense to him if the same loss would have been expressed in terms of monetary value. Right? If I say that, if this 20 acres of forested land is being disturbed, and, in the process, we would be losing ecosystem services worth 1 million or 2 million, probably that would make more sense to you, or more sense to the layman, or more sense to the stakeholder, okay, or to the policy maker. And that would basically lead to, better decision making. Right. And that's why, with this ecosystem services valuation is an incredible concept which was laid by Sir Robert Costanza and his co-authors in 1997. So let us better understand it, what it is. See, ecosystem service valuation is one way to make the hidden subsidies of nature visible and quantifiable. Right. In 1997, Robert Costanza and his co-authors compiled massive data sets on land cover and valuation studies to arrive at a total value for Earth's ecosystem services. So they tried understanding what is the total value for Earth's ecosystem services, and it was published in the journal Nature. In doing so, they described the Earth as a highly efficient, least cost provider of human life support services, whose total value is somewhere between 16 and $54 trillion, with a median value of $33 trillion. You can understand. Okay, so now you can argue that that the cultural service, the recreational service, or it fills our stomach. How basically we can owe a monetary value. Basically, it was just to make a layman understand that how what sort of environmental benefits are associated with the proper functioning of ecosystems, or when we try to disturb them for any sort of developmental activity, say mining or say dam development, how basically we are causing harm to the provision of ecosystem services to mankind. Okay, so this paper, it became a centerpiece of policy and academic discussions on the appropriate methodology and scope of ecosystem service valuation studies. And since then, whenever we carry out any environmental impact assessment of any sort of developmental project, ecosystem services valuation is always taken into consideration. So you can read more about him and his work by searching his article. Then, it is important that, when we are talking about ecosystem degradation, when these ecosystems they get degraded, obviously due to, anthropogenic activities on rise, the ongoing anthropogenic activities or the ongoing development, basically through this degradation, we bear a loss to the provision of ecosystem services. Right? In spite of the ecological, cultural and economic importance of these services, ecosystems and the biodiversity that underpin them, they are still being degraded and lost at an unprecedented rate or scale. One major reason for this is that the value, that is importance of ecosystems to human welfare, is still underestimated and not fully recognized in everyday planning and decision making. And in other words, we can say that the benefits of their services are not only partly captured in conventional market economics. Furthermore, the cost of externalities of economic development what are the externalities that, some bearing on the environment, and that is generally, it is a cost associated with the development. Example, pollution or deforestation, they are usually not accounted for. And while inappropriate tax and subsidy, that is incentive systems, they encourage the over exploitation and unsustainable use of natural resources and other ecosystem services at the expense of the poor and future generations. So see, because of all these developmental activities, the ecosystem gets degraded. We over exploit the ecosystems, for say, different commercialized products, for because pollution in these natural ecosystems, there is a whole lot of illegal dumping which is observed. Then large scale deforestation is carried out, overgrazing, these are different anthropogenic activities which lead to large scale ecosystem degradation. And understanding the scale of ecosystem degradation in the current scenario, we need to work towards its restoration. Restoration means, assisting in the recovery of ecosystems that have been degraded or they have been destroyed, as well as conserving the ecosystems that are still intact. Okay, so we try to make efforts towards recovery of the ecosystems which have already been degraded, or we try to conserve the ecosystems that are, still intact. So healthier ecosystems with richer biodiversity yield greater benefits, such as more fertile soils. They provide, fertile soils which provide, better yields of timber, fishes and other products. And they provide, and they're larger stores of greenhouse gases, because, healthier ecosystems, they are, storehouses for carbon sequestration. They sequester the excessive carbon dioxide which is present in air. Okay, then restoration can happen in many ways. For example, through actively planting, or by removing pressures so that nature can recover on its own. Okay, man doesn't have to interfere a lot in the ecosystem functioning even during restoration. We just need to, actively reforest, carry out afforestation programs, or we need to just, do away with the pressures which are actually degrading the ecosystem. It is not always possible or desirable to return to an ecosystem to its original state, because it is very difficult. We still need farmlands, and we need infrastructure on land that was once forest, for instance, and ecosystems like societies need to adapt to a changing climate. Okay, but the extent of exploitation should be sustainable. We should think about the upcoming generations and not exploit recklessly. Restoration initiatives, they can be launched by almost anyone. The governments, the development agencies, to businesses, communities and individuals, each one can, carry out the restoration initiatives. That is because the causes of degradation are many and they are varied and can have an impact at different scales. So, we need to realize that we are also stakeholders of ecosystem degradation, and yes, we need to be stakeholders of ecosystem restoration. We should also participate in the restoration programs, and we should try to understand that yes, we humans are responsible for the ecosystem degradation, and how better we can make efforts towards its conservation or restoration, right? Now, for most of you who are living in Delhi, you must have seen classical examples of ecosystem restoration, the live examples, which is biodiversity parks. And in case you haven't got to visit any biodiversity park, do try to make a visit. I would explain that how these are classical examples of ecosystem restoration. So before we begin, you need to understand that there are different biodiversity parks which are present in Delhi. This is Yamuna Biodiversity Park, Aravali Biodiversity Park, Neela Horse Biodiversity Park, Tilpat Valley, Northern Ridge, and Tughlaqabad Biodiversity Park. Right. And these biodiversity parks, they have been developed in collaboration of there's University of Delhi Center for Management of Degraded Ecosystems, that is SEMD, and the DDA, the Delhi Development Authority. Okay, with their collaboration, Professor C.R. Babu led his group, and he worked for the development of different biodiversity parks. And see, these are live examples of ecosystem restoration. These have been developed on the lands which were completely derelict, completely degraded, and how they have been restored and, converted into healthy ecosystems with time. Okay, so you should better read about them, and you should try to visit these biodiversity parks for a better understanding. Not now, definitely, once this pandemic gets over, or the phase becomes at least normal, you should always try to visit at least Yamuna or Aravali Biodiversity Park. Because Yamuna is actually very much situated very close to University of Delhi North Campus. Then there is another Dhirpur wetland which is being developed, developed in this collaboration between SEMD and DDA. The concept of biodiversity park, it was first developed by the center as a conservation model for bringing back the lost natural heritage in the development matrix of the city. Okay, out of the DDA 6 biodiversity parks, 4 DDA biodiversity parks have already been dedicated to the nation, and 2 of them, that is Yamuna and Aravali Biodiversity Park, they have already become the nature reserves of Delhi. So you can understand this all has happened from zero. That is, these were completely degraded lands. Okay, the Aravali Biodiversity Park, this was basically a mined land wherein mica mining was prevalent and it was degraded. Then Yamuna was, Yamuna Biodiversity Park was planned on the land which was full of sedimentation, and it was completely salty soil with high pH, unfit for plant growth. Okay, so these biodiversity parks, what do they do? What functions do they perform in urban scenarios? They serve as a source of environmental microbiome for enrichment of human microbiome, that which will reduce health risks and public health burden. Then they serve as a filter for point and non-point sources of pollution. They help in recharge of groundwater. They store flood water, then impart climate resilience to the city, and they buffer local weather. They preserve vanishing gene pools of plants, animals, and microbes, because here you will get to see, they have restored, they have developed herbal gardens. They have, they provide, access to different butterflies by growing different native species, which are host plants to several butterflies, and they facilitate their oviposition as well as, butterflies can feed upon them. Then they serve as a hub for promoting environmental and nature education among students and public. Right, when you get to see biodiversity parks, you learn that how basically biodiversity is existing in a natural ecosystem. Because those of you who don't have access to forest, or who can't visit forest, at least you can have a glimpse of biodiversity amidst urban areas. So, you can also consider Yamuna Biodiversity Park and Aravali Biodiversity Park as case studies for exemplifying the concept of ecosystem restoration. The Yamuna Biodiversity Park spreads over an area of 185 hectares in the upstream of Wazirabad and has a wide range of landscape elements. A total of 2,000 species of plants and animals, they live together in 30 biological communities. The Yamuna Biodiversity Park has biologically rich wetlands that attract thousands of migratory birds during the winter season. The common mammals cited are barking deer, Indian porcupine, small Indian civet, Indian hare, wild boar, and others. So recently, we got to hear in news that a few years back, a leopard also arrived at the park. So you can understand, when producers are there in harmony, it slowly and slowly keeps on supporting other trophic levels, and you can easily see lot many species of plants and animals existing in harmony at Yamuna Biodiversity Park. Then talking about Aravali Biodiversity Park, it spreads over an area of 280 hectares at Vasant Vihar, Vasant Kunj, Mahipalpur of South Delhi. It has about 2,500 species of plants and animals living in about 35 biological communities. The AV fauna is represented by some 250 species, and bulls, blue bulls, jackals, porcupine, and Indian hare. There are some common animals in the park. Right. So, with this, I think we finish our discussion on the unit ecosystems, and, try to read in detail about the unit ecosystems and the different concepts which we discussed. The material, again, I repeat, is present on the School of Open Learning website. From therein, there are 3 PDFs available in the EVS material, in the environmental studies material. You can download and you can read. Right, and then you can also have access to previous year question papers from the website, and please go through them as well. So, we will be meeting and we will be talking about the Unit 3 Natural Resources on 15th January at 3 to 4 p.m. Okay. Meanwhile, you can put your questions, if any, in the chat box in the question and answer section, so that we can easily deal with them. Okay. Good afternoon, Varsha. Okay, Upasna, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Bhavya. Khushi. Okay, Gracie. Okay, Daksh. Khushi. Okay. Okay, fine. So you can put your questions, if any. Good afternoon, Aditi. Good afternoon, Gracie. Aditya, I very well explained and I again just repeated that all the reading material for environmental studies is available on the School of Open Learning website. And for hard copies, you can contact School of Open Learning. Okay. Rest, you can find all, the reading PDFs, the reading material, it is there on the School of Open Learning website. I hope you were able to see and the PPT properly then. Simranpreet, I have already explained in the last class, and again I repeated today that from where you should read that in detail. We don't have any provision of forming the WhatsApp group. For any of your queries, you can write here in the question and answer session, or you can simply approach School of Open Learning authorities. Yes, Udita, I just explained the reading material is available on the School of Open Learning website. For the recorded lectures, please contact the School of Open Learning authorities. They will be able to help you. Okay. Good that you got to understand what I explained, and you can just tell me any question which is available or which is coming in your mind, which you are unable to understand. K. Ragul Khanna, you should, I think, better ask a School of Open Learning authorities for this query of yours. I won't be able to handle the same. Recorded lectures, again, you need to approach School of Open Learning authorities. Regarding examinations, that would be intimated to you on the website. Okay, so Sanjana, see, ecosystem restoration, it is not same as sustainable development. Basically it hints towards and it reinforces the idea of sustainable development, that we should try to access the resources which are provided by ecosystem, or we should try to access the goods and services which are provided by an ecosystem to an extent. We should not have reckless exploitation of the goods and services which are provided by the ecosystem. So we should have sustainable access to the resources which are provided by the ecosystem, and then there would be no degradation and there would be no need of restoration or conservation of ecosystems. Okay. Okay, Varsha, hope that's clear to you. Vibha, you get different sort of questions. We can, in the end, we can discuss what is the exam pattern. Okay. Usually we ask you questions pertaining to different sort of ecosystems. The pond ecosystems, the desert ecosystems, and the forest ecosystems. And then, you should understand that how this ecosystem structure and function, they exist. What is the concept of ecosystem services again? Avifauna, Kritika, it basically refers to, birds. When we talk about fauna, fauna refers to animals, avifauna refers to specifically birds. Kritika, hope that's clear to you all. Good afternoon, Neha. Okay, good, Varsha. I'm happy that everything is clear to you. Biodiversity, Pranchi, we will be reading ahead in the units ahead. See, biodiversity refers to species level species level diversity, ecosystem level diversity, and genetic level, gene level diversity. ठीक है, जब हम बायोडाइवर्सिटी की बात करते हैं, we talk about the diversity which is existing at the level of ecosystem. Say something if it is existing in pond ecosystem will be very different from something which is existing in the terrestrial ecosystem. Some species, okay. Then these are the ecosystems, first of all, they are varying. So this is ecosystem level diversity. Then going deeper into the system, we have species level diversity. I differ from any dog which is existing in my colony. The dog differs from cat in the colony, because we three are different sort of species. So this is species level diversity. Then there exists gene diversity, genetic diversity. That means that I and Pranchi, we look very different from each other. Why? Because we have different sort of genetic makeup. We are differing at the level of the gene. So when we take into account all these three levels of diversity, we call it as biodiversity. Okay, hope that's clear to you. Okay, Nishant, see, ecosystem services refers to all the different goods and services which we derive from the ecosystem, and they are beneficial to mankind and they are very much instrumental for the human well-being. Okay. Okay. I just discussed, Khushi, that what sort of questions are quite important from this unit. Vinita, in case you missed your previous class, please contact School of Open Learning for the same, and please try not to miss classes. Okay, although you will get recorded lectures, but it is always better if you join the live classes. Okay, you better understand the things. Nishant, I think I made it clear. In case of any clashes in the schedules, Himanshu Singh, please approach the School of Open Learning. Please, Himanshu, approach School of Open Learning authorities for this. Explained ecosystem services. I think I am clear, class. Total units, there are 7 units, and right now we just finished unit 2. From next class onwards, we will be beginning with Unit 3, which is natural resources. Rishabh, I can see your text. Okay, so hope it is clear to you. Estuaries, it is a sort of Varsha. This estuaries refers to, it is a sort of aquatic ecosystem. Okay. It is a type of aquatic ecosystem. Units are 7. Okay. Thank you, class. Thank you, Gracie. Thank you, Siddhi. I hope the things are clear to you. So we will be meeting in our next class. Okay, from 3 to 4 p.m. on 15 January, Saturday. Fine. Okay. Good wishes. Take care. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav sir.